Okay, hello everyone. This year, Tishea Beav falls out on Shabbat, which means we fast on Sunday. I thought that today we'll speak about certain halachot that are particular to this year, as opposed to the regular halachot of Tishea Beav. But this year we'll discuss certain halachot that come out particular to this year. Now, the first thing, let's start with Erev Tishea Beav this year is Shabbat. On Shabbat, there's no avilut, but there's always that type of underlying tension that a person has. To what point is Tishea Beav really applicable on Shabbat? In the times of the Rishonim, they used to say kinot on Shabbat Chazon. And over time that minhag was nidbatel. But nevertheless, the nigunim of Tishea Beav, many communities, for example, the Moroccan communities, have a special nigun of Tlata de Puranuta. It's called how to read the havdala, that the Rivash and the Magen Avram, who brings this Rivash, already talk about. Lechadodi is different by the Moroccan communities. On the other hand, we eat meat. Most communities eat meat. There are some communities that had dry meat, some communities that didn't have meat at all. But the overwhelming majority of the Sfaradim and the Ashkenazim have meat, as it's written in the Gemara and Nifsaken Shulchan Aruch, that afilu malea shulchanu afilu kesudat shlomo, right? That it's a regular year that a person has to that has to feel Shabbat. However, there is an interesting Shulchan Aruch in Siman Tav Kuf Nun Dalet Sif Yutet that says Imchal Tishea Beav b'Shabbat mutar bekulan afilu tashmish hamita. That means that even tashmish hamita, even marital relations, is permitted on Tishea Beav shechal b'Shabbat. And the Rama says yesh osrim b'tashmish hamita v'chen noagim. Some forbid it, and there's a machloket in poskim how we follow in this regard. By the Sfaradim, it's more lenient. Even by some Sfaradim, there are machmirin. But according to the Shulchan Aruch, it seems to be that Tishea Beav is mutar in everything, even in private. That means this Tishea Beav of Shabbat is totally permitted, which would mean that there's no restrictions whatsoever, and a person has to be happy just like any other time. The truth is that the Birkei Yosef in Siman Tav Kuf Nun Daled writes, despite this Shulchan Aruch, he writes that one shouldn't take a walk this Shabbat afternoon. One shouldn't take a look lo yitayel. It's not proper since it's Tishea Beav. And one looks closely at the Birkei Yosef, we'll see that he's talking even in the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch lo yitayel. Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul in his Sefer, he says, well, if we follow the Shulchan Aruch, then you'd even be allowed to take walks. But according to the Birkei Yosef, seems to say, even according to the Shulchan Aruch, one shouldn't take walks. And Rav Ovadia Yosef and Chazon Ovadia has actually posek this way also, like this Birkei Yosef, that it's not proper to take walks on this year, because even if it's Shabbat, but there's a certain amount of koved rosh a person should have, a certain amount of respect and koved rosh. Which means as well that's why there's no Seudo Shilishit in the synagogues, in most places at least, because it's gatherings, bitzibur, people tone things down a little bit. So although, according to Shulchan Aruch, one doesn't have nihug avelut, he doesn't act like an avel, which means even in private, ad kedei kach according to the Shulchan Aruch, but nevertheless, to tone things down a little bit. Which is, by the way, why the communities who have a special nigun for Tishea Beav, even though they ask, well, you're not supposed to do avelut. It's not called avelut, it's called hit-orerut. The nigun is not the same nigun that's done by this haftarah than the haftarah of Tishea Beav. It's a sadder type of nigun, but not ad kedei kach that it's a nigun that, we'll say, arouses hit-orerut of that it's a little bit different. By Ashkenazim also, they have a special nigun when they read Kriyat Torah of the pasuk Echa Isa Torchechem Umasechem in this week's parasha, because it brings a certain amount of koved rosh, but it's not necessarily that it's that you're acting nihuge avelut. It's very important to make that distinction before we start. So, as we mentioned, taking walks, according to the Birkei Yosef, should be avoided. We don't say tzidkatecha mincha, right? We don't say tzidkatecha mincha. And we also don't do hachana. There's an isur on Shabbat of preparing for the weekday. So there's isurei hachana. You don't prepare the machzorim, you don't prepare the parochet, and all the things. You don't prepare the chairs before on Shabbat. That's obvious. What's not so obvious, some people, they want to prepare physically. So you eat and you drink. There are certain pills that people sell nowadays, which are called pills of kalei hatzom, or fasting pills, that people have them, and it's slow release energy that gives a person an easier time fasting. So usually you take them the Erev Tishea Beav or Erev Yom Kippur, and that's fine. But this year, if you take it Erev, that's Shabbat, that's called Hachana. So the poskim say it's not called Hachana. First of all, is it called the Refuah or is it called the Hachana? So the poskim on both accounts say it's not called hachana. Actually, the ones who started and have the patent, I believe, for this pill is the Toronto Kollel under the leadership of Rav Shlomo Miller. And Rav Shlomo Miller has a teshuvah about this, that he writes that there's no problem of refuah because it's preventive. It's just helping. You're not sick. It's just a preventive. It's even better than vitamins. It's preventive. For Sfaradim, for sure, preventive is okay. And even for Ashkenazim, he says it's okay. And furthermore, it's not called hachana, just like you're allowed to sleep before Shabbat, as long as you don't say, I'm taking this for the fast. So even though this pill is a little more chidush than sleeping, because it looks like you're taking something, but it's a way of eating. It's not nikar that it's called hachana. He permits it. And other poskim as well write that there's no problem in taking this pill Shabbat, and it's not called hachana. So those kalei hatzon pills would be allowed. Let's say somebody had to walk a far distance on Shabbat, and he's all sweaty, and it's very hard for him to enter the fast when he's all sweaty and grimy. So usually on a regular Shabbat, he could go into the bathroom and wipe off parts of his body with cold water. Yeah, ever with cold water. So over here it's Tishea Beav. Nevertheless, even if it's Tishea Beav, since you're not doing it for pleasure and you're just removing dirt on the day of Tishea Beav, there are poskim who would say that it's permitted. There are poskim that would say permitted in such an instance. Now, yeah, there are poskim who permit it. I have over here in the notes of Rav Gidon ben Moshe on Alon that he put out also that he permits showering in cold water on Shabbat of Tishea Beav. Okay, next, what's going to be for washing little children, also showering little children. So here they don't have the same requirements of zecher lachurban. So in truth, even on Tishea Beav itself, if that's the minhag that they wash every day because they get dirty, they would be allowed to. Rav Ben Zion Bashol was of the opinion that until bar mitzvah age, it's a big chidush in Or Letzion Chelek Bet Perek Lamed Vav Od Dalet. He says until bar mitzvah age they would be able to shower. Most poskim say until 9 years old they would be able to shower because that's the age. Some say that Tzitz Eliezer says until 7 years old. The Minchat Yitzchak says until 9 years old. Rav Avad Yosef also says till 9 years old they would be able to shower. Even on Tishea Beav or Tishea Beav Nidche, they'd be able to shower. Okay. Once Tishea Beav comes in, so we eat until the tzom, which is shkiat hachama. Shkiat hachama already you can wash your mouth out. Even if you didn't do birkat hamazon yet, it's not a problem. You're not eating, so you do mayim acharonim and you do birkat hamazon, and you even if it's after shikiyah, but you don't eat obviously after shikiyah, right? A couple minutes beforehand, also not to get into any problems. Now we're entering Tishea Beav. What do the women do about all the dishes? What do the women do about all this? A lot of dishes. What are they supposed to do with all the dishes? Motzei Tishea Beav. So, in truth, it's written in the Shulchan Aruch in Hilchot Avelut that in Siman Shin Pev Yoredea Siman Chav Bet that one is allowed to wash dishes and prepare for the Seudah on a day of Avelut, and Tishea Beav is no worse than that. Nevertheless, Nevertheless, Rav Ben Zion Bashol writes in Or Lisyon Chele Gimel Perek Chavtet Teshuva Yud Dalid that you're allowed to wash dishes. You're not allowed to wash dishes on Tishea Beav because it's called a melacha. It's called a melacha that you're doing, and it's taking your mind off the avilut, even though it's a very light melacha, but it's taking your mind off. So he says, if it's sticky and it's gross and there's bugs coming over there, so then you're allowed, just like any hefsid, you're allowed over here, you're allowed to be shomer perotav, or you're allowed to go up until your neck on Tishea Beav over here too as well. Nevertheless, if you don't have a tzorich, says Rabbi Ben Zion Bashol, you shouldn't wash dishes. And if you have to, you should use gloves. Now the truth is, using gloves sometimes is worse because then it has all types of you feel dirty afterwards and you have to wash your hands. It's not so simple. But in the sheets of Rav Gidon and Moshe point out, it's not so simple that if you would use gloves, you'd have to wash your hands afterwards so you don't gain so much. However, in regards to actual washing dishes, Rabbi Ben Zion Bashol says it's better not to on Tishea Beav. Nevertheless, using a dishwasher would be allowed because that you're not doing anything and it's not masiach da'ato mina avelut quoted in Gilyonei Chukei Chaim in Yerushalayim that you'd be allowed, and also if you have a non-Jew washing the dishes, that al kol panim is allowed. But you yourself doing it is masiach da'ato mina avelut. So that's an important detail. Now after chatzot. Rav Ben Zion Bashol says that you'd be allowed, because then just like any other melacha that you're allowed, so after chatzot also. So you'd have to wait for the kelim until after chatzot, which is not so pleasant for some people. If it's causing a tremendous distress, then that would be allowed just like any other makom have said. But otherwise, you could put them in the dishwasher and let the dishwasher run. Otherwise, if the person doesn't have a dishwasher, it should really be avoided. Now, so many women are not fasting this year because there are poskim that say, Rav Ovadia Yosef and others say that on a Tishea Beav nidche kal vachomer for Yud Zayin B'Tammuz. I'm not going to get into those details now, but they say that women who are meubarot, what's meubarot? They have to ask if the first month is meubarot or not. That's a separate question. But a meubarot or minakot, they're patur from fasting. So if that's the case, that they're patur from fasting, so it's Motzei Shabbat, what do they do about havdala? So Sephardi women really do havdala, right? So we're allowed to do havdala. They're posek like the Rambam, that they're allowed to do havdala. So they do havdala. On what? So the Sephardic poskim mention that since it's a davar shel mitzvah, they could use grape juice. Knesset HaGedolah and others, that since it's a mitzvah, they could use grape juice. By the Ashkenazi poskim, bichlal, women don't do havdala. So if the husband does havdala for her, it's also a question, because maybe he's not mechuyav. So some question that maybe that the husband is not mechuyav, it's also a problem. So what some poskim say that one is able to do is, for Ashkenazi poskim, there's a whole discussion. Rabbi Yashiv has a teshuva about it, back and forth between him and his mechut and the stipler, whether if Tishea Beav has a din of avelut. There's all beskrav on this, that there's Tishea Beav is a din of avelut, and avel is mutar beyayin. In other words, erev Tishea Beav is kmo meto mutal lefanav, which is an onen, which is asur beyayin, but on Tishea Beav itself, it's mutar beyayin, whereas the stipler said no, it's logara from Tishat Yamim, and one can't have wine, only a chamar medina. So the minhag by most Ashkenazi communities is to have chamar medina, which could be hot coffee or beer or 100% squeezed orange juice. Otherwise, you're getting into problems. Machlokot regarding what chamar medina is. But for Sfaradim, the woman is allowed to do havdala on wine. When? So there's a tshuvot bayechayi from the Sherik Gedula that says right away, as soon as Tishea Beav comes in, she's mechuyav in havdala. Rabbi Shalom Misas writes in Shemesh Umagen that on the contrary, she's not mechuyav yet to do havdala. So why should, only when she's ready to eat? In Shemesh Umagen, and Rabbi Shalom Misas writes that only when she's obligated to actually eat, then she has to do havdala. But beforehand, even if it's Sunday, she can wait till Sunday. So there's a question when to do havdala for women. Now, let's just discuss. For children, usually they don't have to do havdala. Usually children don't have to do. The minhag is that children just eat, if they eat, they don't do havdala. But some poskim say children. The Rav Vosner writes in Teshuvot that women should do havdala. I don't think the minhag is that way. I think most children, they just eat without havdala. Now the last thing is Motza'e Tishea Be'av. Usually, Motzei Tisha Be'av, there are certain restrictions that we don't have basar v'yayin, and in many communities also there's no kibus v'tisporet, there's no laundry and haircuts until Chatzot because the Bet HaMikdash was still burning. This year, the Shulchan Aruch writes in Siman Taf Kuf Nun Chet, since it's a Nidche, the Shulchan Aruch writes that the Shulchan Aruch writes, that doesn't write anything in this regard, but the Rama writes, V'imchal Tisha B'Av nidche liyom rishon, mutar lechol basar v'lishtot yain b'yom sheni. You're allowed to eat on the next day, basar v'yain, but he says at night you shouldn't, because aveluto shel yom, which is a concept that the avelut of the, if you're an avel during the day, or if you fast during the day, you should remember at night, not right away, to go into basar v'yain. It's not kavod for the fast, even though the Bet HaMikdash wasn't burning. That's what the Rama writes. Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring this down. And in the Ktavim of Rav Shmuel Vital, says in the name his father, Rav Chaim Vital, would have right away on Motzei Tisha Be'av Shenitche, which is like this year, besides the fact that there's no restrictions this year of laundry and of haircuts, but also basar v'yayin, one would be allowed, which would mean also music, because it really goes hand in hand. Music would also be allowed this year. So basically, according to Sfaradim, there are no restrictions whatsoever. Interestingly, in the Hagaot of the Ish Matzliach brings in the name of Rav Matzliach Mazuz that he would be machmir on basar v'yayin even this year on any ta'anit because aviluto shel yom, and also Rabbi Baruch Toledano in his Kitzur Shulchan Aruch also writes that somebody should be machmir at night of the at least night not to have basar. At night, in other words, Motzei Tisha B'Av, Sunday night, not to have basar. But the skama of most poskim is to allow basar v'yayin on Motzei, to allow basar v'yayin on Motzei Tisha B'Av. So basically, there would be no restrictions, and hu adin music. For Ashkenazim who keep away basar v'yayin, lechaura hu adin music also not to. Chazaku baruch. Press the